This is the Sic Em Podcast. The Sic Em Podcast is a production of Baylor Athletics. Now, here are your hosts, Brooke Bednarz and the voice of the Bears, John Morris.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's Sic Em Podcast, a production of Baylor Athletics. We're glad you're with us this week. John Morris, Brooke Bednarz, and Brooke, this will be fun today. We are going to put a bow on the Our Time documentary series on Baylor basketball that we've all enjoyed so much this season.
Absolutely. It's about time we talk about our time
But
and spend some time with the director of the show. It's just been so fun to watch and to be able to follow, and especially for you and I mean, you've been in it, but for me to be able to be also a storyteller and watch all these stories unfold has been a really great time.
So we welcome in our guest for this. No person better to do this than T.L. Fiedler. Welcome to you, and we would give you the title of director, but I think that is just kind of scratching the surface,
right.
Isn't it?
It might be. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I mean, director, we're a small crew, so we're definitely embedding ourselves and try to keep a very small footprint. But yeah, directing as far as like trying to figure out storylines and all that stuff. But I do also shoot and do my own audio, and then I have a partner, Blake, as well, who helps me. So we're a very small crew, and I think it helps with the intimacy of the doc.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's so fun to watch. I know for Brooke also, because Brooke puts these stories like this together, feature stories, things like that. I like to see how the sausage is made, not just the finished product, but I like to see the behind the scenes. And it's amazing how much video, how much audio y'all have to cull through to put these into, succinct episodes. It's really, and y'all have done a really, really good job at that.
I appreciate it. I will say, usually when I'm documenting athletes or, a person, whether it's an athlete or not, it's a lot easier because it's just one person. Mm-hmm. But it's two whole teams, 7 players mainly on one team and 8 that we're focusing on another as far as like the kids get the most playing time, and then a whole coaching staff. So they're really short episodes. What I'm used to with so many people. So just to try to jam everything in is a lot, but we do our best to try to show who these people are.
Absolutely. That's my hardest thing. First of all, I love this podcast platform now because I'm long-winded. Shocker. But that's the hardest part for me. And I can only imagine, when I find this great story and I do this great interview, and then it's like, oh, it can only be 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, 3? What? So I end up telling everyone else about all the extra cool stuff. But one thing, before we pass on that, you talked about you trying to leave a small footprint. And I was floored when I first met you guys and found out that it was just you two and a team. I thought y'all had way more people here after watching the first couple of episodes because of how many different shots and interviews and stories and all of those things that John just mentioned. So I just kind of want to talk to you about what that was like to be on this small crew. I mean, it's not new to you, but to be handling all of these 2 different programs, to be spread so thin and to still create such an amazing product.
Thank you. The way I sort of look at it every time like I jump into a new project is basically like just earning the trust. And I think like it helps having a small crew and not, 6 people with a ton of equipment and, boom mics and tons of lights and this and that. We're kind of run and gun. Which I think definitely helps. But I think the very first thing is literally earning the trust from the people. And then once you do that, you're in, mm-hmm. and it's genuine on both ways. And I think like once you're in, they forget you're there, but they also, if you're not there one day, they're like, where were you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then you're
you
like,
missed a great thing. I said,
yeah, well that, or we kind of liked having you around,
Yeah.
I mean, it's been great. And, I'm so appreciative and loved my experience. But, like, to hear 1 or 2 people from either team saying, where were you? You were used to having you in the tunnel. I'm like, oh. Yeah. Like, it just makes you feel part of the family, kind of. And that's literally how the whole experience was.
And to get the buy-in from our administration and then from the coaches, like for you to go to Coach Drew and say, I want you to wear Mike. all the time. I mean, and Coach Colin, I mean, that's a big ask, but that's where that trust comes in, you know, that they're going to wear a mic and you're going to have, I mean, obviously we review every show before it airs. David Kay does that, but that's a real trust factor for them to say, sure, I'll do that.
It is. It is. And I appreciate it 100%. Forget the video and what we produce and what we edit and put out, but just, you know, just to allow me in, like, you know, it just makes for better intimacy on camera, to be honest. You know, in the very first day, I've said this a few times, but miking up Scott Drew, you know, he's like this big time, like college coach, and I think I mic'd him for 5.5 hours, like pregame all the way to the end, and I was just floored. I just love that experience. But as we moved on, and you know, Coach Nikki, who's also incredible, and having her mic'd for 5 hours as well, many games, like there's just a lot of things that don't air that like she'll say things. She has a very funny personality. She's hysterical. She'll say things just so I hear them.
Right.
Yes.
There's that. And then, there's a lot of stuff with Coach Drew too. So, you know, I appreciate a lot of stuff that doesn't, you know, obviously make the show, but it's kind of like between us. And
that's fun.
It's fun,
yeah.
You know?
That's really fun. Knowing you're listening, knowing
right.
it probably won't make the show, but she can say something knowing that she's mic'd up. So that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I love that.
Let me go back when you got this assignment. How did it start? How did you get involved in this project?
Yeah, I think my bread and butter is embedding with people. You know, some of my history is it's mostly sports, but I did, you know, I embedded with like a J-Lo and some actresses and stuff like that. So, but mostly sports, usually one-on-one, usually NFL quarterbacks or college quarterbacks going into the draft. I do this often, and I'll just embed with people or, you know, whatever they're involved in type of thing. So this is what I do. Yeah. Never followed 2 teams through an entire season. It was like, at first I was like, what? You know, by myself? Yeah. Like with one other person?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it seemed like a lot, but again, going back to what we were saying before, just they embraced us. So it made it way easier. I mean, we knew exactly how we were going to like format the shows and that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, this is what I do.
Yeah.
So they said Baylor basketball. I can't say that I knew too much about the history, and not too much about Waco. But I was willing and ready, a little like mentally overwhelmed with what was ahead of me. Just hoping that I'd be embraced and allowed in. And it was beyond that.
Yeah.
It was beyond that. Like to the point, like when I think of this series, I don't really think of like what we've edited and produced. I think about like the relationships.
Yeah. That's great. And part of that is good. I think you don't have any preconceived notions coming in here, right? And it's all new and kind of, you know, a blank canvas to you with Baylor basketball, with Waco, and then you just set to work, you know, painting that canvas.
100%.
Yeah, that's
100%.
really cool.
How neat was it? Or neat, I don't want to pick your words, but what was it like to have, I mean, because they're both Baylor basketball when you look at them at the end of the day, and therefore they complement each other very well. But they're coming into 2 totally different realms, and you were getting to piece those together, where you have Coach Drew coming off of that national championship and a very established staff of 19 years here. And then you have Coach Colin, brand new. We've framed that all year as a new beginning, new players, new faces, new lineups. So getting to kind of marry those 2 teams and kind of find those bridges and connections, that was fun for me to watch.
Yep.
But I want to know from you what that was like to take those 2 very different programs and kind of bring them together.
Yeah, like kind of like John Morris was saying a little earlier, like it was a blank canvas for me. Like I can't say that I knew everything Scott Drew has accomplished, to be honest. Of course, I did my research and I know what he's done and I know what Nikki did. But to me, they're brand new humans.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I didn't look at it like, you know, he was accomplished in, you know, in this world and she is brand new to it. And, you know, I understood their backgrounds, but to me, they were brand new. So I like, you know, it's just like asking them questions and being around them, trying to develop who they are as people and like who they are on the team. So does that make sense? Like
Yeah.
I just, they were brand new to me, so it didn't make a difference. I didn't look at one as more established than the other. You know what I mean? And yeah, it was just cool to like see it all develop.
That's very good. Is there, this may not be a fair question, is there a favorite segment, show?
I was going to ask that.
I mean, some of the cool things that stand out to me, you followed Nikki home to Atlanta, and that gave, you know, her family is there, and you gave the viewers of the documentary a look at her, and nobody would have even known that she had gone, but you had her with her family. You followed her there. That was cool. You followed James and Kenjo to Oakland. Mm-hmm. That was really cool. So you've been in Waco, but you've traveled quite a bit also.
We have.
Yeah.
We have. I mean, there's so many off-the-court stories and times, like the two that you mentioned that were super special, and both of those that you just mentioned were beyond special. Going back with James was amazing. The environment he grew up in. Again, he let me in. I don't think cameras had been in the projects. And they just embraced me again. Like I wish that were, a 7-10 minute piece because it deserved it. It was a little shorter, unfortunately, because there's just so much there, and how he was embraced by his world and protected, to make sure that he was going to be able to, be successful in his craft, if that makes any sense. Because a lot of kids there probably didn't make it. You know what I mean? Amazing. Like incredible. And I've been around a lot of athletes in my life. That was pretty special, like very, very special. And of course, going home with Nikki was awesome because she's got a whole world and a whole life back in Atlanta, and 3 kids that have their own lives, and a husband who's an accomplished basketball coach. He's been around forever, and now he's taken the Mr. Mom role, and she's pursuing her college coaching dream, obviously. And I won't go through the whole thing. You'd have to watch the episode to understand it. But, they've got but she's a mom, and to be away from them, and that's a lot on her.
It's
but,
tough.
But I think she balances it effectively in the best she can. And I know she had just gone home this week, so she's able to see some of her kids' lacrosse and dance competitions and stuff like that. So good for her.
Nice.
A little time off,
Yeah.
As this is all, wrapping up and the final episode is released, when we think about that and you kind of sit here for a minute and kind of just reflect, I mean, you've been here for a good chunk of time. Basketball season is not short. You've had lots of trips. You've been with this team day in and day out. And now, all these athletes will go home for the summer and get some time off when the school year ends and you go on to your new assignment. Have you thought about what that is like and going to be? I know that can't be easy.
Are you trying to make me cry?
I know. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, we're
going to miss having you around. I see you. I work out at the Farrell Center, and I see you all the time. I'm like, hey, guys.
Yeah, yep. And that's literally how it is. And doing the wrap-up segments over the last week with all the students, the athletes and the coaches and stuff, it's emotional. I mean, I think they've kind of liked having cameras around, and we've formed some great relationships. So it's funny. I was talking to Charlie Melton, the strength and conditioning coach on the men's team, a couple weeks ago, and he's like, "We're going to miss you." I'm like, "I'm going to miss you guys." But you know what? It ends for everyone. Mm-hmm. That's what's weird. A lot of these kids, Kendall goes to the draft, other players graduate, and Alyssa's going to the draft. Like, it all ends. So it's not just me leaving. Like, I'm like, okay, so it's sad for you too, Coach Melton?
Yeah.
Like, good, because I hope it's not just me. It's not like I'm just leaving a family that's, like, living, here. Like, everyone kind of moves on, and that's part of coaching too. Like, I don't know that I could be a college coach because this was, like, I'm only a TV human, and it's, like, it was emotional, like, from my end. You know what I mean? And they go through this every year.
Yeah.
And it's what a beautiful thing, to help, like Coach Drew was saying, like, spiritually grow these people, help them, obviously on the court, but also make them into not better people, but like help them grow spiritually.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
Have you ever covered, I know you mentioned actresses and actors and professional athletes. Have you, had you done college athletes before?
Just football.
Just football.
Yeah. I mean, well, to be honest, I've done a lot of one-offs on a bunch of different sports.
Okay.
A ton. But as far as lengthy, projects, I would say mostly just a lot of, like, Jameis Winston I followed for like 3 or 4 months going into the draft.
Okay.
Blake Bortles, a lot of college quarterbacks going into the draft mostly. Not so much in season. It's sort of after they leave college, I think. But yeah.
Well, what would you say, getting to compare and look at this season, is maybe from your perspective the benefit for our student athletes? We have all these NIL stuff happening, which that obviously isn't this, but this is kind of a step in that direction of, like, opening the door to, hey, we're in college and this is my life and there are cameras around and everything I do is documented. And, when I have that one bad game, it's not just that one bad game. It's going to be shown in a show, released in a couple days later. And it's how did I handle that? And it's just put on a bigger stage, not just on the day that the game happened, but on this series. So from your perspective, is how beneficial is opening this door and kind of pulling back the curtain, so to say, for what college basketball has been like at Baylor?
Yeah, I mean, when these I hate to say kids, people, young adults move on, if they go into the draft or they're in the NBA or WNBA, people want to know these people as humans, right? So I think anytime they expose themselves above and beyond the court, it's just good for them. It's people want to know who they are. So I think in that regard, but also, for the ones that maybe aren't moving on to the NBA or the WNBA, to be honest, I think it's just a good experience to speak in front of cameras and it gives, it just kind of builds their confidence. I'll tell you, meeting Kendall originally, day one, sweet kid, Kendall Brown, quiet, maybe shy, maybe reserved. And as the season grew, we shot with him last week, and it actually blew me away because he's usually really just quiet, and he opened up about missing the times he knows he's going to miss or whatever, and in the relationships he's formed, and then talking about, his next phase in life. But he developed, and I'm not saying I did that for him or, you know what I mean? But I saw him grow. Mm-hmm. And I think, people are interested in him, and I think he started out as a quiet kid, but I think moving on, when he's going to start getting, interviewed, I think he's going to do a great job, because he's expressing himself a little more, and maybe he has more confidence in expressing himself, because he tends to be more of a quiet kid, but I was really proud of him. I was like, the sentiment came right out, and I was like, wow, it was real too. Wow. I was like, wow.
That's really good.
Yeah.
That's really good. That's one of your kids, It's what it is after you've been here this whole season and seen the highs and the lows and the ups and the downs. And it really, you have seen more and helped document more than most people would ever see. You're in the locker room before games, after games, traveling with us, things like that. So it really does, one of the best things, it helps the viewers of the series really get to know these guys and these girls and the coaches, really get to know them on a deeper level than they would ordinarily. Yeah. Well done.
Thank you. I mean, it's been super special from my point of view, and I'm just so grateful for the experience, to be honest, on a personal level, as opposed to just a professional level.
Right.
Yeah, it's been great.
All right, tell me this: the show airs on ESPN Plus, and it's archived, so it'll be out there available anytime. But you and Blake and Scott and the others that you've had here, you don't work for ESPN per se, right? You're independent.
So I've never had a full-time job.
How's that?
Yeah, I mean, I was an intern at ABC Sports in 1994, and my career took off from there, meaning just, you build a lot of relationships, and honestly, the person who hired me for this, I was a production assistant with him at ABC, so that's kind of how it works. Like a lot of special people from that world, go on to different places. So no, I do golf. I do, a lot of different stuff. Yeah. But, no, it's just project based, or sometimes I'll just get a phone call can you work this weekend or something longer term. But yeah, so it all varies, which makes it interesting.
Right.
I'm going to be sad leaving here, to be honest. Didn't know anything about Waco and Baylor. It's I went home for a couple days and then came back, and it's just, it's sad, but it's nice. You know what I mean? Having the experience is awesome, and then I'll move on to something else. Yeah. And I don't know, maybe next year we'll come back and do 1.5-hour shows. That's what Baylor deserves. Let me tell you, they deserve longer shows.
That'd be great. But along those lines, you're an independent contractor, correct, so to speak, but you've got the backing of ESPN. So when you have game highlights that you're showing, you'll mix in our radio calls, but also the ESPN calls, and you've got that video from them, and I mean, you get a lot of support there, don't you?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. And then back to your original question, yeah, I mean, because I work for Fox Sports, I work for NBC and ESPN, and I'd say most of the content that a lot of the content that I have produced over the years has been probably ESPN, and I do love working for them. They're great. Yeah. Yep.
How has it been working, since all of you are different, just individuals? Have you guys worked together before? And what has that been like to kind of pull together all of these puzzle pieces to build your team and be the team covering the teams?
Sure. The person, again, who hired me, Victor Vitarelli, I've known for years. He's partnering, with another entity. And I had worked with Victor before, but not the other entity, Bo Mattingly. He's great. So I just had met him, but they're real close, so that worked out. And then they threw me here. And then luckily I had Scott and Blake, who live in Austin, super close and willing to come and stay in the Airbnb. And just kind of be on call literally 24/7, no joke. Like, it's like, oh, I don't think we're shooting today. We're shooting the next 4 days in a row. And Blake's been with me a lot, in the last, I would say, I don't even know, 6 weeks or whatever. Sometimes we'd have a couple 3 camera guys, depending on if it was like a back-to-back game sort of thing. Luckily Blake and I never knew each other. I had known Scott, and when you get comfortable with someone, it's the right fit. And Blake's great in the same situations that I am. Not to like overpower a room when there's a lot going on. If a coach is talking or this or that, you try not to interrupt. There's certain things that you got to have a certain demeanor to be a part of a documentary series, and Blake's been great. Scott was great. My little crew is great. So no, I mean, he and I formed, a close bond where we'll probably work in the future, but no, we had never worked with each other. And, again, there's not a lot of other people on the show. So, I don't know. That's about it.
Good. Well, the perfect scenario for the final show would have been national championships for the men and the women, right? I mean, he had more confetti. That didn't happen. Still great seasons by the men and the women, Big 12 championships, into the NCAA tournaments, ended way too soon there. So as you try to put a bow on it and wrap it up, the final episode, how tough is that to try to, you're not going to, recap the entire season, but you want it to be a fitting, climax to the series.
Yeah, for sure. It's like, I know Scott drew pretty well and Nikki pretty well. So like a couple texts went back and forth, after the loss on a personal level. But like when we got back into Waco, it's kind of like give everyone a little space, but also you got a show to shoot,
Yeah.
So
True.
it's like, and all players included. And we sort of eased into it, gave Scott a good 24 hours and gave Nikki, unfortunately lost a day later, same. A day later, gave her another 24 hours. But, we went into the Farrell Center and started shooting with Scott, and he was, again, open arms. Come on in,
Yeah.
Of course, super sad about the loss and all that, but jovial and most welcoming as always. And he makes me laugh. He's great. And same with Nikki. But, like, we would run, we'd run into players, like, in the locker room, and we'd just be like, or in the hallways, or the training room, because they're still getting treatment and stuff. And it'd just be like, sorry, what do you say?
Right.
But they're like, oh, we got to move on type of thing. But what we focused on basically every time we did a short little shoot as a wrap up is basically, how was the season? What are your highlights? How did you, what came out of it for you, and what's next? Mm-hmm. And some players don't know what they're doing. A lot of them aren't sure, and some of them are coming back. So it was kind of like, how was it? And what's next for you? Life moves on, so you can't really harp on, the actual game, and we weren't actually covering the games.
Sure.
So it's more about, again, emotionally, what did the season do for you and where you headed?
Yeah.
Well, I think that is kind of neat. I mean, obviously NCAA, for anyone who doesn't know, you can't legitimately cover that game. The NCAA has rights and everything to the press conferences and the actual game time footage and things of that nature. But like you said, they're people, and it's a lot more than just that game. And so I think it's fitting, despite the outcome of the game, that this last show is about what the whole season meant to them, and not so much the X's and O's of the outcome of the game, but overall what the season was for and about. And so that's got to be pretty neat for you to help, explain further who these athletes are as people and kind of reveal one layer more as they go on to whatever is next for each of them individually.
Right. And we couldn't get, segments with every single athlete. We shot a lot of them. It was great just hearing from everybody, just about honestly, all I got from everyone was just like, man, it was just all love. Mm-hmm. It was cool. It was really, really cool.
So to wrap things up, what's your overriding memory going to be of this experience here at Baylor?
You cannot ask me that.
I am asking you that question.
No.
You would ask me that question and get it on tape, so I am asking you that question.
I love it. I love when people who ask questions ask each other questions.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've said it a couple times already, and I'm not just saying this. It's the experience I had overall meeting these people. It's funny. I will, I'm super critical of my content, what I shoot, what comes out sort of, I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, and I wasn't in the edits, looking at everything, but I tried to remove myself from that a little bit and let it be handled with the hands that are on top of it. Because I only can do so much, right? Yeah. I'm here shooting, directing, building relationships kind of thing. And that's being handled. So I'd watch maybe the first, the first cut type of thing, but then I'd let it go. Right. But so I would say it's not so much that it's not I'm proud of a lot of pieces I've done in my life, but it's not for this project. It's not that. Yeah. It's literally, and I know I've already said it 14 times and people will be like, all right, she's annoying, but it's the people, it's being here. It's being embraced.
That's great. That's great. We got good people here. I'm glad you feel that, and I'm glad you help document that, showing a side to, again, our coaches, our student athletes, and the two programs that people ordinarily would not see. So I think that's a huge benefit.
Yeah, and I think if I were just plopped at Alabama or plopped at, I think of all these other schools that I don't really know, but would I have had the same experience? And I'm not, singling out Alabama. I don't know anything about them. I'm just randomly saying if I was at Oregon, if I were, I don't know. I don't know that I don't think I would have had the same experience. You know what I mean?
Sure. Oh yeah.
It's just, it was an experience of a lifetime for me as a person. So I'm just so grateful. I think they all know because I saw them all in the training room and the locker room. I was like, love you. Bye, guys. I love you too, so it was great.
That is great.
Well, I think it also says a lot about you and your team because it goes both ways. So very lucky that we had you guys and your team to be the ones to document this story and to embed and to be a part of the Baylor family for a little bit.
Thank you.
Well done. Well done.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. And thanks for letting us ask you questions.
Yes.
Turn the tables a little bit. We appreciate that. And I know folks enjoy getting to hear from you. So you're part of the Baylor family now, you and Blake and Scott and everybody that was part of this project. So don't be strangers and stay in touch and good luck, whatever your next project. Do you know what your next project is? Do you have anything?
I just work with athletes and entities all the time, so I don't know. There's not one thing that's coming. It's kind of a lot of things are sort of brewing.
Sure.
But one big project like Baylor basketball is not happening at the moment. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for everything. You and your crew, you did a great job. And like I said, you're part of the Baylor family now. And thanks very much for helping tell the Baylor story so very, very well.
Thanks for having me.
All right. T.L. Fiedler, our guest, the director for Our Time, the docuseries documenting Baylor men's and women's basketball this season, which, Brooke, it is archived. It's still available if folks are saying, oh, I missed it. Well, you didn't miss it. It's still out there, available on ESPN Plus.
Right. So when they miss basketball, they can just go back and binge watch all of them at once.
Oh, yeah. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
All right. For Brooke Bednarz and for TL, I'm John Morris. Thanks for being with us on this Sic Em Podcast.
You've been listening to the Sic Em Podcast. The Sic Em Podcast has been a production of Baylor Athletics.